Hey everyone, I'm Jennifer. Have any of you ever wondered why every year during the holiday season we put a tree in a living room such as this one?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah?
Good question.
Yeah.
Good question, Jennifer. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, the Christmas tree has been a tradition for many families, including ours, all across the globe for centuries. But the founding of this tradition is actually unclear. Many theories and stories have explained its possible origins, but none have been proven as true. As Catholics, we put a tree in our living room and decorate it every year, but we really haven't given much thought into it. We may have thought about it, we haven't given much thought. And I just want to take a few minutes for you to learn and for us to appreciate this custom and religious holiday. So I'm going to tell you about possible ancient origins, some German history, and some folklores, as well as the tradition throughout American history. The Christmas tree, before it became known as the Christmas tree, started with ancient civilizations. In times before the arrival of Christ, people hung evergreen boughs over their doors and the windows. Evergreens were cherished because during the solstice, and since it was cold, they were one of the very few living things that were able to sustain themselves during the winter. It was said that they would keep away witches and ghosts and evil spirits, as well as some illnesses. It was also said that when you hang an evergreen bough over your door, that it would bring new life into the spring. These trees were recognized in honor of the sun god to get better, because when the earth felt cold, the people believed the god was ill. This tradition celebrated the winter solstice, which is the shortest day of the year. The Egyptians, the Romans, the Celts, and the Vikings all had their own tradition of trees to symbolize and honor a belief. The Egyptians brought the evergreens into their homes, which symbolized the conquest of life over death. The Romans decorated houses with trees and lights, and even exchanged gifts for the Saturnalia, which is the Roman feast for their god of agriculture. The Celts had the same idea as the Egyptians. The wreathed temples with evergreens to signify everlasting life. Now the Vikings, they actually believed the evergreens to be a special plant of the sun god. Further into the centuries, even millennia, the Christian Germans impact and shaped the tradition. It is argued that the Germans may have started the Christmas tree custom that we know today because of the folklores passed down through generations. In 1722, Saint Boniface saw pagans trying to sacrifice a child. And what he did is he cut down that tree, and in its place at the base grew a fir tree. Saint Boniface mentioned that the branches reached up to heaven, and therefore this was a holy tree, and it was the Christ tree. It was the symbol of God's promise for eternal life. In the 16th century, Martin Luther, who was a reformer for the Protestant religion, actually tells a very fascinating story. What he did, one day he was coming home from work or just out in a day. What he did, late at night, he saw the stars, and he looked at it and saw it in the trees, and he saw how brightly the trees reflected the stars, and he thought it was so beautiful. What he did is he brought it home, he brought it to his family, and he decorated it with candles all around. Also, Queen Victoria visited some relatives in Germany, and she fell in love with Prince Albert. So they then went back to England, so every year they would put up a tree in the castle, and they would decorate it. After Queen Victoria died, her people loved her so much that they continued this tradition, and this is how the tradition spread. In America before the 19th century, the tradition was rare because the Christians did not believe in pagan symbols. Christmas was so sacred to American Christians that any activity other than attending church was a disrespect and a, quote, mockery to Christmas. This means no caroling, no decorations, or any joyful expression. So imagine you can't go outside and go caroling like we do every year. That was their belief. So in 1659, the General Court of Massachusetts actually outlawed these demonstrations of happiness and claimed it to be a penal offense. In the 19th century, the German and the Irish immigrants actually moved to America, and this penal offense actually disappeared. It wasn't until the 1830s, though, that when Pennsylvania displayed a Christmas tree for the first time in public square, that this tradition became aware to the public. Ironically, by the 1890s, the Germans and the Americans had their different views on how the Christmas tree should be displayed. The Germans decorated their 4-foot trees with apples, nuts, marzipan cookies, and popcorn of many colors, and even berries. The Americans decided to have their trees go from the floor to ceiling decorated with homemade ornaments.
Okay.
Electricity was used, and this is how the lights appeared on the tree. And this is how they were there for days and hours every day. And thus the tradition was born in America. Now, not only houses, but office buildings and public squares and dwellings where trees are resurrected and decorated all around the world. The ancient civilizations, the Germans, and the tradition through America have played roles in spreading the idea of decorating trees and houses. The ancients decorated their evergreen boughs to bring honor to their gods and their beliefs. The Germans recognized St. Boniface and his ideals of the sacred tree, as well as Martin Luther, who is an important figure, started the German tradition, supposedly. And Queen Victoria was such a beloved ruler that this is how it spread. The Christmas tree, hasn't always existed from the beginning of time. But it has certainly been influenced by the civilizations before and after Christ. We as Catholics who celebrate Christmas take this tradition for granted. But now that you know, each of you know, what the origins of the Christmas tree are, I'm sure you can appreciate more its heritage and its origins.
Right.
Yay! Yay!